Good morning, everybody. It is the start of yet another week. We are cruising into the month of December very shortly here. We're getting to the tail end of the NFL season, and we need to talk about some stuff because things have changed, guys. Things have changed. And it's not all directly to do with the Seahawks, although it definitely affects them. And if you're somebody with any degree of desire or optimism that this 2023 Seahawks team can make something or should make something of this season, then this week was a disaster. And this is going to be kind of like one of the rooting guide postmortem videos, but not really. It's going to be more of a overall picture in this NFC wildcard race because that's obviously where the Seahawks are right now. They're clearly in the wildcard race. They're clearly competing with these other NFC teams for a second rung playoff spot. And I said a couple weeks ago that it really looked like there were 7 teams in the NFC that were going to just run away with those 7 spots, with the only real intrigue being who was going to win the NFC South, because the NFC South is such a bad division. There's still an opportunity for some teams to sneak in and steal it. That hasn't really happened though, and as of right now, I can't say that anymore. Like, there are a couple of teams that are waiting for somebody in the playoff picture to fade out so they can jump in. I thought they were all going to fade to the point where they couldn't even capitalize if something happened to one of the playoff teams, but we've got a couple of contenders here. Now, first of all, the week is not over. We still have a game tonight. Vikings play the Bears. I don't think it's out of pocket to say the Vikings are probably going to win, which doesn't help. But yeah, we still need to see that. If the Vikings win, they hold the 6. If the Vikings lose, they drop to the 7. Seahawks move to the 6. But honestly, the problems right now are bigger than the Vikings. So let's take a look at this playoff picture right here. So obviously you have the 3 clear division leaders: Eagles, Niners, Lions. And then you have the NFC South, which is right now probably going to come down to the Falcons and Saints. I think they play each other the last week of the season. It'll come down to that. And then you have the Cowboys, Vikings, and Seahawks holding their wildcard spots. So there was definitely one point this season where it looked like those were just going to be the 3 wildcard teams, and it was what it was, and nothing really was going to be able to stop that because of the way the other teams in the NFC were doing. But we've gotten a couple of surprising results, and a couple of these teams are not going away. There are now 3 teams who are a game behind the Seahawks for the 7 seed, and also that same currently game behind the Vikings. The Vikings will play tonight and either solidify or weaken their position, but everybody's going to play 17 games by the end of the year anyway, so it's not like that matters at the end. So Packers, Rams, and Saints have put themselves in position to take advantage if the teams above them slip. And the team that is most likely to slip right now is the Seahawks, because they're playing bad and because they have a very difficult schedule coming up. So it's not the clear path that I thought. And honestly, at this point, after what happened this week with the Packers winning, with the Rams winning, with the NFC South getting more muddled up, with the Cowboys winning, with all these results that did not go the way the Seahawks would have preferred, I think we can now say that the Seahawks are unlikely to make the playoffs. And if that holds, I first of all, I just want everybody to keep in mind here that this team has completely collapsed in the second half of the season 2 years in a row if they collapse this season. Last year they were able to come out of the tailspin just in time to barely get into the playoffs. This year they may not. But either way, this is looking like a second straight year of a second half. I feel like collapse doesn't even really do it justice. Just, you completely forget how to be competent on the most basic of levels. This year feels worse, but honestly, it probably isn't, because we actually have a these are good teams we're playing. But either way, just something to keep in mind. But let's take a look at these teams that we're going to be in contention with, because really it's the Vikings, Packers, Rams, and either Falcons or Saints at this point. Tampa Bay's falling out of it. Washington's fallen out of it. These other teams are pretty much, I think you can forget it. So the Vikings, like I said, they play the Bears tonight. Then they get their bye week, and they get the Raiders with Aiden O'Connell and the Bengals with Jake Browning. So that's pretty soft. That's pretty workable. Even without Justin Jefferson, they'll probably be favored in both of those games. And then it gets kind of interesting here at the end. That being said, interesting is kind of the key term there, because quite honestly, Detroit's not playing well lately at all. If we're being honest, Detroit has not played well lately. And Green Bay, I don't know. Now, and that's part of the good news here. The good news is a lot of these teams are going to play each other and kind of knock each other around and throw some L's around, but that also means there are going to be some wins. So we are actually in a position where unless the Seahawks win some of these tough games coming up, they're going to need a lot to go right. So having these games where one team that you want to lose is guaranteed to win, even if another one is guaranteed to lose, is actually not that great anymore. But they have a home and home against Detroit, and then they have a home game against Green Bay, and I don't know what to make of that game anymore, but I still don't think Green Bay's all that good. So I think the Vikings actually have a pretty clear path to, I'd say, double-digit wins. But let's talk about the Packers here, because suddenly they're alive. They beat the Lions on Thanksgiving. They held on against the Chargers. They caught the Rams without Stafford, and suddenly, boom. So you look at their remaining schedule. They've got the Giants, which should be a relatively easy win. I know it's on the road, and the Giants' defense has been playing well. That's a game you would expect the Packers to win. Tampa Bay's reeling right now. They might be fading back into irrelevancy where people thought they were going to be this year anyway. They've got at Carolina, and then they've got another game again, technically another game against the Bears at the end of the year. So that really might be 4 wins. And then they've got at Minnesota and at home against Kansas City. Those games, they're probably not going to be able to get them. And I still don't really think this Packers team is all that good. I think that they've been the beneficiary of some circumstances over the last month, like getting the Rams without Stafford. But they could be turning it on a little bit here. It's not out of the question. And they are another team that could easily, just by kind of taking care of business, find their way to another 4 wins. So that would get them to 9. Now, let's look at the Rams, and keep in mind here, the Rams own the tiebreaker over the Seahawks no matter what happens the rest of the season because they beat us twice. So they are guaranteed the tiebreaker if it comes to that. So they've got the Browns, and I know the Browns are a good team, but they're liable to completely no-show any random game they play on offense because their quarterback situation has become so atrocious. Both of their top guys are now hurt. Then they've got Washington. Washington's flushed their season at this point, basically. The Saints can go either way. And then they've got the Giants. And Frisco might be resting starters in Week 18 and give the Rams a free win. So I look at this schedule and I go, they've got some really good opportunities to bank wins. And again, they own the tiebreaker no matter what. So they beat Washington. They beat New York. San Fran gives them a free win in Week 18. Then they just really need to be able to beat Cleveland in this upcoming week, and they are looking good. Now, the good news is the Rams are not really a good team. They are a mediocre team that plays well against the Seahawks, unfortunately, I guess, or beats them or whatever. So they could still lose some of these games. Like, they could still lose to Washington. They could certainly lose to the Saints. And I definitely don't think they're going to beat the Ravens. But this is not a bad schedule either. They can easily maneuver through this and get to 9 wins. And let's take a look at the Falcons here, because here's the thing. Here's the confusing part. The issue will only be if the NFC South race comes down to the wire, right? Because if one team can assert itself and run away with the division, the other teams are going to fall back so far they're not even really a threat. So if the one of these teams can just like take care of business and kind of run away with the division here at the end, then we're probably good. But as of right now, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. There was a chance for the Saints to like put away the division almost yesterday. There was, and they didn't do it. They lost. So now the Falcons are still here with 5 wins. They're going to New York. Could go either way. I don't know what to make of that game. They still got a home game against Tampa. They still got Carolina. They got the Colts. They got the Bears. They got the Saints. I feel like every game the Falcons play the rest of the season can just go either way, depending on who shows up and when. Like they could go 6-0 or 0-6 on this schedule, and it won't surprise me that much. At the very least, I would say I think they can go 5-0 or 0-5. Yeah, you should probably expect the Saints to win in Week 18, but I mean the point I'm trying to make is there's a very good chance that Week 18 game is for the division, and the loser is going to hope the wild card breaks their way. And then you've got the Saints, the other part of that equation. They've got the Lions, they've got the Panthers, Giants, Rams, Bucks, Falcons. I mean, I wouldn't expect them to beat Detroit, although again, Detroit's really not playing good football lately. They're really kind of slacking here. And they are playing some again, these teams are all playing each other, which is kind of nice. But I'm just looking at this and I'm going, I could see a path to them getting to like 9 wins, and that's kind of the magic number here. Because if the Seahawks lose their next 3 games and win their following 3, then they are at 9 wins. And I already said the Rams are guaranteed to own the tiebreaker over the Seahawks no matter what. So if we get 9 wins and they get 9 wins, they're in. And further tiebreakers, I'm not so sure about. But the Packers beat the Rams this year, right? The Packers were able to beat the Rams, so that would be a point in their favor for a tiebreaker. Now we were able to beat Detroit, so if they get swept by Detroit, that kind of cancels that out. They lost to the Steelers. If we beat the Steelers, that's obviously going to give us an advantage, and we kind of need to do that to make this an interesting conversation anyway. But the tiebreaker with the Packers is muddled. The tiebreaker with the Falcons would be what? I mean, they lost to the Cardinals. That would help us, right? They lost to Washington. We beat Washington. They lost to Detroit. We beat Detroit. So we might be good here. We both beat Carolina. They'll probably beat Carolina a second time. But it's not clear, right? It's muddled. This tiebreaker stuff is not really in our favor. It might be in our favor with the Falcons, but like we already know we lose to the Rams, and the Packers thing kind of depends on what they do the rest of the season. So this has gotten very complicated very quickly. This was pretty simple a couple weeks ago. A couple weeks ago, it was like we had 7 teams that were clearly better than everybody else. Now, the Seahawks have faded very quickly here to the point where I think a lot of fans are kind of expecting us to just lose out or maybe win one more game this year. I don't know if it's going to be that bad, but the way the team is playing, I don't really expect to beat anybody decent the rest of the way, I guess. And these teams, they're they're putting stuff on the table here that I didn't think they had. So this is where a lot of people are going to come and say, well, who cares? And I kind of agree, right? Like if the Seahawks want to earn a playoff spot, then let them earn a playoff spot. Good for them. Awesome. I'll be happy about it. I'll sit down and watch that playoff game and be really happy we did it. But if they're going to back into a playoff spot after playing like garbage, then who cares if they don't secure it? Like, why should I be unhappy that they didn't get a playoff spot that they didn't deserve anyway? Now, I do like to watch one more game. I do like to have one more game. I do like to make the playoffs. I'm a little more amenable to this team backing into the playoffs than I was, say, the 2021 team. But still, I agree it's not really the priority. But, I mean, deep down, I think that every single fan out there wants to believe that there's some possibility that the Seahawks can back into the playoffs and then turn it on. And we would be deprived that if they don't even make it in the first place. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Just had to talk about this for a little bit.